messes with the algorithm, I'm going to be like gamer girl.
Literally,
Hi, beautiful person.
I told everybody, I'm like, I'm going on Twitch. They're like, really? Maybe that's where you belong. They're like, maybe that's where you belong. A lot of them were like, oh, you'd be such a good streamer. And I was like, okay, well, now I know who doesn't know me too well.
Why? Because you don't think you would be?
I mean, just, I guess like my association with boy thing, and this is like such bad feminist of me, but like a boy things and girl things is actually still quite strong. You know what I mean?
Pink and blue. This is a blue platform, is what you're saying?
Yes. Exactly. I'm like dinosaurs, Transformers,
Crocs.
Twitch. Crocs, I had a crossover moment. I have a tie-dye Crocs, so that's girl things.
I said trucks, but I actually also own a pair of Crocs. And I will say on the Crocs front, we are not going to ever talk about Crocs ever again on Twitch or in conversation between you and I. I bought one pair of Crocs 20 some odd years ago because I was on production when I was producing my television show about Indigenous cultures and the preservation of Indigenous languages and rites of passage and blah, 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 blah. And I was standing for like 16, 17 hours a day. My feet were killing me. And someone was like, you should go buy that new shoe, Crocs. I did. It took up half my backpack. But it's sincerely, those things are made of like nuclear plastic that it has lasted for 20 some odd years. Yeah, and it's like done the full circle, same pair. And it's like come back. And now my kids buy me all the little bibbits or whatever they're called.
Oh, to stick in the shoes? I haven't reached that point. My Crocs are 2 years old now, and I've inherited another pair from my sister. I don't think I'm going to be a Croc person. Actually, I got it's a new style that's like the ones that waitresses wear. They're like clogs, kind of.
Clog Crocs. Image.
I wear them all Wait, those are my go-to.
Clog Crocs. Wait, with what? With heels?
No. They're like the ones that you see waitresses or like nurses, like doctors wear.
Okay, that's AARP.
I love but look, listen, shoes and comfort. I had a knee injury that took me out.
Were you an athlete?
Dancer, classical ballet.
Okay, you guys, you have to see SOL. You have to see SOL move. I don't even want to say dance. We were just talking about the nuance of like, I was calling people lazy, and our friendly person Jay was like, it's not lazy, choose smarter words. But I want to carry on that same discipline into my conversation with you, of which is you always level up the way that I show up in the world, even when it's just one-on-one. But yes, you were a classical ballet athlete dancer, but you move as part of like the way you move and show up in the world feels like it's a different language. And it's connected to something like up, down, over, like all the compass marks. And I'm a little intimidated by it because I can't get out of my way to move like that.
I don't know. I think I'm very sometimes in my own way, but sometimes I'm really grateful for that. Like I feel like I thought a lot about what is self-sabotaging, because I didn't know that was a thing. Like we hear it and it sounds so grand, but it's actually really, really tiny. And so when I started to unpack all the ways a person can self-sabotage, I was like, oh, I'm like stellar at that.
Yeah. Have you met people? This is like, but like self-sabotage, like for like men, particularly like white men, particularly men that are in like strong men households, per somebody else earlier in the chat was talking about the difference between like strong men and messiahs, or like the myth of messiahs. They start sabotaging, they start sacrificing their young. We start sacrificing our young at like the age of like 3 months old, particularly if you're a boy.
What does that look like?
And they're taught to self-sabotage, not crime. Choosing sports over your friends when you turn 13, 14, 15, 16. only caring about like at one point the length of your penis, and then at one point how much money you have left in your 401k. Like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
this is so interesting. I was having a conversation with a friend who is transitioning, and they were saying to me that they feel that their goal is to be as perfect as possible, like aesthetically, through this like period. And I had to sit with like, is that my goal? Because the conversation came up because I have my front left tooth, I chipped it and I got the enamel restored, but the dentist, I don't know if this was racist or if it was just like I don't know what it was. I went to the dentist looking a mess that day because it's the dentist, but they decided to give me the enamel that was like a shade more yellow because they were like, oh, we wouldn't want it to like stand out. And my teeth are white, but because of that, I now have like a single yellow tooth. And you can't whiten
Did you
enamel.
know? Yeah. Did you know? Did they show you the color, the options? No, they just started like
I mean, like I trusted. He told me like, you know, it'll look unnatural if your teeth aren't super white to have the whitest, you know, the whitest porcelain. Or so we're gonna go with a shade darker. But my teeth are very white, and I get them whitened too. So now I just have like a slightly more yellow tooth.
Let me see.
Oh gosh, and I've been drinking coffee.
I can't.
You see it. You see it. It's there. So I called this friend and I was like, I'm trying to decide if I just need to release this, if this is like an obsessive beauty thing that like a neuroses of me being a woman. And then they were like, no, like as I'm going about this process of, you know, transitioning, like I want to refine myself to be as perfect as possible, like any cosmetic enhancements possible. And so I was kind of thinking like, oh, this person has not yet begun that, you know, that evolution. And so I don't, as a woman myself, I'm like, that is a form of self-sabotage. No, to decide that you're going to have your aspiration is like from the starting point is something that we know is unattainable. Like we know that we can't be perfect.
But I think that's everybody's starting point in our culture. That's why I'm so intimidated by the way you move and by the way you move, like the Instagram posts that I've looked at, of which Jay or Sam, if you could drop her Sol's Instagram handle, which I'm pretty sure is in the calendar invite into the chat, that would be awesome. But the way that you move feels unplanned, imperfect. You don't drive, your body does. And that contradicts the way that you're showing up as a bombshell gorgeous right now. Listen to me. I Botox. I was in Dubai this past over spring break. And I went because there was like a really good deal on cryotherapy where they like freeze your fat.
Freeze you, yeah.
Yeah. And my cousin was like, it's a deal. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Like I do nothing but live in this like contradiction state. And like, I know I'm going to get more free when I don't care anymore, I think. And I recognize I'm like totally a contradiction to saying to my daughter, your body's perfect as it is. And also wishing she didn't inherit my thighs.
God. My mom was really vocal about beautification. It's like, it's a part of her thing. Like she's always been, okay, astrologically, she's a Virgo. So I'll start there. If that was all I told you about my mom and you learned about Virgos, then you'd know everything about my mom. Like she is quintessentially.
I'm selfishly, I can only speak about Cancers.
So the perfectionist tendencies, like the beautification, Beyonce is quintessential Virgo, Zendaya is quintessential Virgo, like my mother is quintessential Virgo. Okay. And so she had 3 daughters. And my brother is the oldest, but there are 3 girls. And she treated us like her dolls, like all like our clothing, our wardrobes were always to a T. She rotated things out. She changed the interiors of our bedrooms. Like And then when we started to get older, she was not shy about like introducing us to makeup and shapewear.
How
And
old?
I mean, my sisters were wearing makeup start of high school.
Okay.
And I was, since I was a
They're
dancer,
starting. You know they're
even
starting
younger.
early.
Exactly. Like, and like that is horrifying, but also like as I got older, it's a double-edged sword of like I'm really glad I have this like education in beauty because I can do my own hair and makeup when I appear places and I'm like super particular in my own right. But then on the other hand, well, I guess it's a good thing because I know the boundaries of like performance appearance, like how to get myself ready for other people and like to present myself versus like my actual relationship to my organic self is like they don't need to be the same thing. Like I don't feel like I can put on a lip gloss that plumps my lip and not feel like I need to get a filler because I can understand like that temporary state of beauty. I was shown how to enter it and also like shown how to exit it.
Or
Like on a daily basis.
or like maybe to like trade in it. Like there's this, it's one of my, it's probably, if someone said to me, what is your most favorite story ever in the history of stories? I would share this one, of which you've probably heard it. Okay, let me properly do this. Hold on, pause. It's so fucking good. Okay, this is SOL. I'm properly introducing her because this conversation, if we choose, will live in the catalog and then we can clip it and stuff. So let me properly introduce SOL. But before I read her astounding bio, which is like, lives in like lanes and departments of which like I don't spend much time, like in Harvard's art lane. And I do want to talk to you about, did you listen to the dailies today with the president of Princeton? I was thinking about you. I meant to send it to you and tell you to listen because he was like, I'm not going to bend a knee to Trump. And I know how much SOL was led a lot of efforts at Harvard about endowment. And I think it was, if I recall, it was like the endowment allocation to, what was it, Title VII
Prisons.
or like
the investment and like divestment from prisons, from fossil fuels, like just in general, the policing on camp, like just the bureaucracy. And also Harvard, people don't know this, but it is the richest institution in the world.
What's their endowment? 49 billion?
I don't know. They emailed us saying they may lose 9 billion. Literally, they sent out that email this past week. Yeah, they were like, we are at risk of losing $9 billion from the government. This past week.
So SOL was leading some of those efforts. And I want to ask for a little bit of forgiveness, but also if you could continue to help me. I am used to using a different name to reference SOL.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm exercising my way out of that. And I would love to understand a little bit about your name change. But here is SOL's brief bio. SOL is a philosopher, a performing artist who is deeply rooted in perspectives of gender, race, and socioeconomic inequality. And it has made her one of the most compelling voices of our time, of which I put you in a bucket of other folks whose names I'm not going to mention today because you will immediately hang up. But I stand by that.
Oh, no.
I stand by that. I think it's really, I've never met any, and a lot of people that I respect also agree that they have never met somebody who processes and then is able to offer us the insight the way that you do. Known for her stamina and holding hard truth, SOL has an incredible ability to show up exactly where the world needs her, offering clarity and wisdom when the moment calls for it. Her work challenges us to rethink societal norms and provides new frameworks for navigating the complexities of the world today. In our conversation, SOL will guide us through how we can show up with discernment, presence, and deeper understanding of the world around us. And by that, she just has some great tips on Crocs.
Yep.
That's a wrap. So the reason why I met SOL, and I forget who introduced us, it must have been Paula Mendoza, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for a sensitivity editor for my book, Raising Our Hands. And the book I was writing was about the state of American white women. And I had an intuition that I had to write this book and that this book if I had to read the book, somebody else also probably had to read the book, and there was no content out there at the time whatsoever. And I was so afraid of writing this book at every level. I'd be a little bit less afraid today, but it was very scary. And I had a whole group of amazing sensitivity editors who said, from disability to AAPI, LGBTQ, who helped me think about Indigenous, who helped me think about the way that I was saying things and caught words. I mean, the power of words. I'll give a great example. The disability activist sensitivity editor, I kept talking about our addiction to perfection. And it was, the word addiction was throughout the book. And she ultimately came back and she's like, you can't use addiction that way. Addiction is a disease, and you're flippantly applying it to like white culture's relationship with perfection. You're going to have to come up with another word. And I remember being like, oh my God, this is going to be so hard. So SOL, I think you really helped me think about some of the harder things you like taught me while you were protecting the words a little bit. And I'll never forget one of the most powerful conversations that you and I had about inherited perpetrator-induced traumatic syndrome toward the end of writing the book. And like, I felt brave enough with you to talk about at that point, to be like, is that also a thing? And how do we bring it forth? And I remember you were like, I'm not sure it's ready to see the world yet in that state. So that's how I know SOL. But SOL, how did you transition your name, if you want to talk about it? But I would love to hear from you about like how you're receiving the world today. And you can talk about very specifically today or broadly speaking, however you want to deal with.
Like literally today.
Like literally today.
Just in today's news. It's so funny that you recall at the end of that process of the book finding the parameters, or like, I guess it was really the Overton window, you know, of like what can be talked about and digested now, and then what is for like when are we too ahead of our time that we're throwing ourselves out of the realm of resonating, right? Because people just shut down. And actually, when I was at the TED conference, I was producing for the TED conference in 2022 on the audio front. And I remember being really kind of taken aback by how rich the conversations were in Vancouver among conference participants, and how like diluted and reduced the conversations that make themselves out into the public through the TED platform are by comparison, right? Like what people are stepping on the stages and talking about is just so much glossier and like packaged, obviously, but also like intellectually less savvy and rigorous than the conversations that are being had at the dinners and just like in all the, you know, all the surrounding work. And so I asked someone who'd been a repeat, you know, attendee, why is that? Like, why does TED have this underbelly that is actually what TED is? And that's the offering. And they introduced me to the concept of intellectual humility. And they're like, intellectual humility is about providing the information that can be received at a given point, and not going beyond that point simply to show how much you know. And that was a really pivotal moment for me. And I feel like that encounter with the book was one of those moments of intellectual humility of like, I think we see something, we see a horizon of thought that we must approach at some point, but doing it in this realm in this moment may not be it. And I think I'm at another moment of sort of like intellectual humility where there are things to be said, and there are perspectives that I have, and there are things I can see, but trying to think about the meeting point with the people that I want. Well, I was going to say with the people that I want to be talking to, but I think even that is a form of humility I'm undergoing, where I'm like, I don't know who my audience is. Like my audience is maybe not who I thought that they were. And in trying to speak to a particular community, like an amorphous community that was maybe based on values, maybe based off of identities, but it was still pretty ambiguous. Like I was self-censoring because I knew what I thought those communities wanted to hear and what we agreed upon. And I can give like I mean, like more tangible examples is like abolition, like when abolition versus defunding came in the conversation, like reform versus revolution. There's like these constant frictions of which path is the right way, and those fractures being where community breaks off and audience breaks off pretty aggressively. And so I found myself within the past few years, post 2020 organizing and speaking circuits, like really coming back to myself, being like, I think I want to talk to people that are sincerely curious. Like I am a sincerely curious person in the sense like I'm not easily offended. And I think being Black, being a woman, coming from a low income background, it's so interesting because people are always projecting on me what they think my politics are, what they think I have a tolerance for, what they think is going to offend me, right? Even the idea of like coming on Twitch, right, would be like obscene in the minds of some people that have been in the organizing spaces I've come up with. But I'm like, but this is a domain. This is a forum. This is where people are. Like,
it's
I
fun
think
arena. Yeah.
I'm so fascinated with people as a species, the progress of our species. And I feel like I'm just following that thread right now. Like that's where my life is. That's on like the intellectual philosophical front. Like that's where I am, is I'm kind of a lone wolf right now.
Does it feel lonely?
It's felt incredibly lonely. But now it just feels expansive. Like now I'm just like, okay, cool. So whatever I make, whoever comes in I can guarantee there's more alignment there than sometimes when I've spoken to auditoriums full of people. You know what I mean? I'm like, all of those people, where they stood, what we actually agreed upon was like totally unknown, like what the motivations for being present are. But I feel like when I am ready to make clear utterances about what I see about the current political moment, social movements that are cropping up, like it's going to be incredibly rebellious thinker and speaker. But I think that like having the community backing of like the big nomenclature of like feminist, like that was a really comfortable camp to be, broadcasting my perspective.
Are you not in the feminist camp anymore because you feel like your ideas, like, do you feel like when you were like, am I a reformist or an abolitionist? Like, even today, I'm like, I think I'm an annihilist. Like, let the whole thing come burning now. But like,
I've been there.
That's where like the contradiction is. That's where like our curious, and why I think I'm so magnetically drawn to you is you're just willing to hold up the lantern in the dark and like take another step.
Yeah.
And so in that, are you trying to figure out like where you land still, or do you actually have ideas about like what needs to happen and where we should go from here?
I have strong point of views on what needs to happen. Like, okay. I think that the thesis of what's wrong to me is spiritual bankruptcy. Ooh. I think all of the systematic, and this is where that I was like re-engineering systems, producing community, like really in engineering, like the material, like reconfiguring the material situations. And then when I realized, oh my gosh, none of that is what's really, really, really wrong. Like all of these are symptoms of a greater depravity that has to be addressed in regards to like our respective ideas of what life is for and what the human spirit deserves and like what our fellow person is owed from us. Like those just like deeper contemplations not being addressed as we fight over tariffs and think that like that's the thesis of the conversation, is how much it costs to import goods and operate in commerce. Or even just the legislative turnover of like every 4 to 8 years, potentially not anymore in America, but like every 4 to 8 years, the backswing of like, now we're refighting for democracy, for abortion rights, for civil rights. And I'm like, there has to be something less petty and less ephemeral that is the bedrock of why there's so much unrest. And I think it's that the West in particular is so comfortable in our material conditions, though we feel like we want even more, that there's just a really rotten interiority. I don't think people are healthy inside emotionally.
I
So
affirm
like I
all
feel
of
like
that.
taking my like ministry into that direction, yeah, it kind of, I feel like, ousted me from the feminist base, because there was this
It wasn't
insistence
so
that,
like chess tradey. Like it wasn't a chess game anymore. It was a this game. Yeah. It was like it was a requiring this.
yep.
I affirm all of that. And I also think the reason why I have found myself so allergic to my left leaning communities, group chats,
Mm-hmm.
friends who I've been organizing with for so long is there has been this refusal starting on November 6th to not be like, oh, that's right. It's in here. It's in
Yeah.
here. Like, it's not another activation artistic. It's not another like meme. It's probably not another candidate. Like, it's not another story that we can lean on to get us through the thing. Now, you and I can talk ad nauseum about policy that provides air cover for us as we and to give us
Mm-hmm.
the space to do that kind of healing. But I do wrestle, Soul, with your choice of the word spirituality. Like that triggers me a little bit. And I would love to know more about that because I have my own personal story and narrative around what that
Mm-hmm.
is. And also the toxicity of it potentially. So I'm curious about
Mm-hmm.
your word choice there.
I mean, I literally mean it in terms of spirit. Like, I recognize that there's like spirituality is an industry, it's like an organizing principle to life, it's a lens, but it's also like, to me, I'm like, what is the thing driving you? Like, who's in the driver's seat of your consciousness, right? Like, our consciousness is not just responding to policies and whatnot. Sometimes it's like the argument with our ex is the thing that completely taints our character, that makes us so susceptible to right-wing politics, right? Like,
Mm.
it's the spirit inside that's actually craving something beyond any logical political understanding. And that thing, like the consciousness, I guess, as much as I'm saying spirit, I could be saying consciousness.
Okay. So I appreciate that. So spirituality, behavior, Quakers would call it the inner light.
Mm-hmm.
Buddhists would probably, I don't know, but I'm really like picking up Buddhism in a major way. I'm I'm going on like a little bit of like a 1 week hiatus because I'm going on semester at
Oh,
sea next week, and I'm going to be twitching from semester at sea. It's a
what is that?
undergraduate abroad program where they circumnavigate the globe on a ship and they stop at different ports like every 5 days. It's amazing. I'm an alum of
What?
it. I'm going on to Twitch from there too to talk about what it
Oh
means to
my
be
God.
an American. Oh my God, Master Liberty. Okay, so this is why I love Twitch over like Insta Lives or anything else. So we have Master Liberty here, who is every time I've come on and talked about like finance or amendments or he shows up with a whole breadth of like statistics
Oh
or like
wow.
this is what was like earlier he was like we gave China should never have controlled the World Trade Organization. And so, Master Liberty, I am inviting you to be part of this conversation. I love that you're here in chat.
Mm,
Like, questioning, because you know me, like I'll geek out on all of the laws and all the policies and all the headline news. But I entirely agree with Soul that what is broken and what's like we keep trying to start a car and like we can get it running, we can get the engine running, but like we can't ever get it driving because as a collective, because nobody's willing to do this work in here.
mm,
There's too much shame, there's too much embarrassment, there's too much to heal. And so instead we just like lean on policy. So I'm just flagging Master Liberty that like as
I'm
you're like I
seeing.
want to talk about like law and I want to talk about evidence and I want to like actually get into Harvard's endowment. I invite you I invite
Can
you into
someone
this
get into Harvard's endowment?
right. I invite you into this space too because that's what it's about. Like this is about I didn't appreciate until probably 8 years ago Gandhi's quote, to be the change, you have to find peace. You have to be the change you wish to see in the world. And like, I can't hate myself and wish I knew how to do something differently and wish it came easier to me. Wish I could convince people of my perspective better. I mean, that's what my whole therapy session was about today, is we were talking about my mom and my brother. Unfortunately, they're both asleep. And I'm like, I just don't think I've done a successful job of helping them see the way that I see. I, of course, believe that the way that I see is better than whatever. I mean, like, I'm falling into that trap, into that own myth of like the ego that like, look at the thing the way that I do and you'll get it. But I like, there's too much work I have to do here.
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
Master Liberty, it's so much easier to like be in trading the chess pieces.
Well, I'm seeing a couple of things. Okay, so one, someone said it's not right versus left, but right versus wrong, and I feel like that was one of the points of awakening for me. Is we kept talking about equity, and I realized we should be talking about ethics. Like we're talking about trying to level set what people have access to, but the conversation about just morality, like, is this fundamentally something that should be done, though it could be done, and why? Like seeing that word came nowhere into the conversation, ethicality, morality, I was like, okay, this is on purpose. It's on purpose that we don't want people to have a value system beyond a political system, and that the political system can be so divorced from values, because I also noticed it became more of like a flag football, or not flag football, what is it, like where you make an imaginary team, like, you know what I mean, when you can when you make like imaginary
platform.
I can do this, guys. I can do this. My brother-in-law's in the NFL. I can do anything.
Fantasy football. Yeah.
Fantasy football.
Yeah,
so I was like, this is, especially because I was working in spaces where the people that were advocating for political reforms were not actually the people who were most affected, whether these policies took place or not. And so I was like, okay, this sort of alienation from the problem, but simultaneous like Messiah complex, this is because this is a game to you all. Like, I grew up living in affordable housing, growing up on welfare, like that. If you want to see politics at play, go to the hood. Like, I grew up seeing politics at play. I understood what tax brackets were by the time I was 10, because my mom told me, if anybody asks you, I do not make over $20,000 a year, or else she would have lost our benefits, right? So there was so much that I'd understood so young. But then when I got into the arenas of the people that were actually the power brokers that were deciding where things would go, I'm like, this isn't your reality at all. That you're wagering. This is my reality and the people that I care about. And so seeing the ways that winning, to me, within the journalistic realm, it felt like, yes, you want equity, but you also want a Pulitzer. And if these problems have to persist for you to have something to report on, you'd be just as content with that. But that's not true for me. Like, I don't just want the accolade that comes along with me being in this fight. I want to end it. And so I think transitioning that angle, but also to Master Liberty's point, like in terms of legality, like that was my first path, was public advocacy, working in the public defender's office in Baltimore City in the felony division. And in doing that work, I spent months trying to expunge things from people's records and working on trial defense. And I was like, this is, for me, I'm like, I can't make a dent in this, systematically. Like, sure, changing a single life is, that's more than most of us can't even change our own lives, far less, have some sort of impact on someone else's. But to me, I'm like, there has to be something, a broader inflection point that we can be looking toward. And that's when I went into media, and I was like, okay, the narratives that people are ingesting is what's influencing their behaviors. That's the reason that people join gangs, and that's the reason people do drugs. Like, a lot of this is, it's indoctrinated into us of what we like, behaviors. And so I thought, go there. Obviously that was kind of a shit show. So I don't have any answers. There's also someone asking, like, how do I know who to speak to? I'm like, I think that even just having so many agendas in the form of public discourse is where the problem is. Like, what does it look like to just show up with sincerity and be willing to have your mind changed?
And curiosity.
Yeah.
Well, I think, although so much you said.
Mm.
One, I entirely agree with you. Like the Pulitzer, the TED Talk, like it's still a thing. We still trade in that. There's certain demographics that still trade in that. When you go to like the ethicality of the advocates who are not close to the problem and to the challenge, I'm a little stuck there because that is me. I don't
Mm.
know what to do with that. Not that I'm not going to do anything. I'm still going to show up on the line for all the things. For all the things. I don't really know how to reposition myself outside of calling into question my like quick knee-jerk order of something off of Amazon for my kid because I totally forgot to like buy it, you know, or outside of like how am I allocating resources, or you know, someone mentioned that like a policy change or, you know, expunging somebody's criminal record could save a whole life. And like I go back to that terribly cheesy quote that Obama used to say, like, or he quoted somebody else about the story of the starfish where there were all the starfish on the beach and
I
there was
don't
a
know
guy
that.
walking. So I'm going to butcher the story, but it's something, there's all the starfish on the beach and they all needed to get back into the water. There was like some issue with whatever, there was a tidal thing. And there was a guy who was going one by one and putting them all back into the ocean. And somebody else came up and said, you're never going to be able to save them all. And the
Mm.
guy said, I know, but it matters to this starfish. And I can save this starfish. And I can save this starfish. And this goes back to like, I keep using the term brother's keeper, which I don't know if is problematic. And it's like a biblical reference, but like, I have to come up with something else. But like,
I like it.
but like, to me, it strikes me that like if we are in more relationships like the one that you and I are theoretically one
Mhm.
half off air, two are also role modeling here, which is wait, what am I supposed to do if I'm not adjacent even to some of the policy changes that I'm being told others need and want. But I also know that I can pull my weight when it comes into like the Democratic Party, or I know the people who can cut the checks for the candidate, or like, you know, like how do I do that? Also recognizing that I want the freedom to be curious. I
Mhm.
want more humility to concede when I'm wrong. I can do it really well in the public arena. I cannot do it well in my personal relationships at all.
Mm.
At all. Um,
Mm.
and I don't know. That it's just a thought that
I mean, I totally hear that, like the lack of concession in your personal life, but it's because like-mindedness is a part of how you can how you put on the armor to go into the world, you know, and to advocate. You can't constantly feel like isolated, you know, and so when there is that feeling of a lack of like-mindedness, it does grate me. It does grate me more. But I think even with this question of like small solutions can save entire lives, I completely agree. I think what was also misaligned for me throughout that journey is that I wasn't happy myself. And so there was like a martyrdom that was present, particularly when I was pursuing like a legal path. I was like, I didn't enjoy the work. Like mentally, the mental dexterity of trial prep and like investigative work and transcription and all these things, like that was it was good for my brain, but for my spirit, again, like it didn't feel good. And so these ideas of alignment, to me, it's what does it mean if I'm supposedly contributing to the welfare of the world writ large, but like my immediate experience of life is one of like displeasure. And so bringing me back into the conversation of lives that needed saving, and actually the foremost life I needed to focus on, that's where I started to retreat a bit more and just try to bring more alignment into my life. And clubbing, we've talked about this, but like going to nightclubs was like a huge part of that reclamation, because in the daytime there was all this glitz and glam and talking and corporate and strategy and all these things. But then, you know, the nightlife kind of belongs to people who live in the margins, and like retreating into that and enjoying that anonymity and that freedom and that and the grit of that world was like really restorative for me. And then when I was in London clubbing a lot, I also was going to the Buddhist temples in the mornings and doing longer and longer sittings. And so my days just became that. And now, in terms of what service looks like, I'm learning all the different ways to serve and feeling like feeling that disillusionment toward politics and the celebritization of public advocacy
Mm-hmm.
made me look like, how else can I serve? Okay, I can serve myself. I can serve my friends and my family with a lot more, because these are like values. This is what I mean in terms of, like, I had to develop my values beyond like a score keeping card of like what policies are up and down. It's like, how am I embodying the world I want to see, where there is more care and there is more love? And that made me change how I approach my personal relationships. And now it's led me into hospitality. Like, I'm super curious about just feeding people and hosting people
Mm.
and producing like small oases rather than trying to just, you know, stay fixed to this and essentially attempt mind control, but claim I'm on the benevolent side, you know?
I find with the left, and this was the word that I used earlier that someone challenged me. I said, I find also with the left that they get so worked up about like the policy or the thing that it feels like lazy. And I was challenged with that word, or somebody challenged me in using that word. Is it more like complacency? Is it more of a trauma response? Is it more of like a fear to actually like pause? Because there's like white saviorism when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
like the starfish analogy. There's white guilt around like, oh my God, I was born into this hand of cards and now I have to, like the martyrdom of it all. But are you creating little oases because they're one, because you can control them, and or two, because they're the most safe, and or three, because you feel like the big wide world is too far gone and that you have to nurture like that one seed, like your table of six, your table of eight, your
I mean, there's definitely an element of control because I enjoy control, and like, I'm trying to like learn to enjoy surrender. But back to, what we started talking about, it's like comes from a reverence for beauty and like wanting to be a vehicle for it. So I think that that's where like I'm trying to administer like my control tendencies toward, like direct them into like bringing things into the world that I feel like I'm skilled at creating. I don't think I've given up on like a world agenda, but I think I've just seen the rampancy of narcissism today, especially like online, and like the democratization of media and what that does to people. And also beyond like the harm it can do to other people, like psychologically, I think I felt very burdened by being encouraged to like forge a cult of personality. Like, through my early years, like I was being encouraged to like make yourself a persona and get as many people to sign on to that as possible. And I mean, we were working together at the time where I was going viral on Twitter, like constantly, like threads being interviewed for them. And it just, to me, I noticed people were aroused by anger, right? So if I had like righteous indignation towards something, it'd go viral even quicker. And the more that I just started to see what trying to when my relationship to myself became estranged from just I'm me to now I am a brand, now I am a protege of all of my mentors, now I am a personality, and my financial, vitality is dependent upon this. I just was like, this isn't healthy. And that's when health became a value for me, because it wasn't important to me prior to that whether or not I was healthy. Like it didn't even occur to me that maybe I had already been an unhealthy person emotionally or psychologically or otherwise. But in finding that I was supposed to basically be selling the real estate of my mind to a broader audience and like inviting them into my head of like, okay, these are my principles, and you can move in. This will be your address, and this will be your address, and you're just going to be my army. The whole thing, I was like, again, I couldn't really justify these things as like, but I'm the good guy. It really, to me, because what I was studying in school was not just gender and race. I was studying hegemony and subalternity. And hegemony is just like the
yeah. Why don't
aspiration
you
for
define it?
to
Why
take
don't you
over.
define it? Right.
Yeah, hegemony is seeking like domination, is seeking like to export an ideology and make it standardized, make it universal. And hegemony is, it's pejorative. Like when something is hegemonic, it's oppressive oftentimes. And so the more that I recognize even the most like righteous calls to action can be tainted with this desire not to just speak to people who feel compelled to live their life in that walk, but to like also be on top and be the ones dictating things. And that's just like, that's not me. That's not what I'm interested in. Like I believe in the confluence of time, of like good things happen, bad things happen. The moral assignment of good and bad actually doesn't hold up over time when we see like causal effect.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't have, when I realized that I'm not a dogmatic thinker, but I was positioning myself in a career orientation that required me to be, otherwise I'd be a hypocrite. Then it kind of, the whole thing kind of came falling down.
Okay, hold on a second. Master Liberty goes, so basically America. I would say hegemony, am I saying that right?
Hegemony.
Hegemony. I would say hegemony is like patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism. Like it's all of those things. It's not America. America, the story of America is the byproduct of all of those things merged together. No, like that's that if everyone just falls in line with like the strongman theory, if everyone just has like financial equity because they work hard enough, because they on a merit based system, if everyone in America follows the Christian path, which does have an org chart and puts men above women, um, that that all will be right in the world. Like I actually, to me, it's much bigger than that. Master Liberty. It's not just America. Like America is
Mm-hmm.
is part of the. It's a story that fell out of that. But I would also say, Treasure, like if I'm being honest, I have like a hegemonic idea of
Hegemonic.
like I want people to be like kind to themselves and to each other, and like God forbid if we could all just be able to do that, wouldn't like it just be like roses and daffodils. So does that mean that I also have a hegemonic belief?
I mean, maybe. That was a part of my radical ego death. Is like I'm actually not here to convince. I'm not even here to
Sorry, what did you
model.
just say? A radical ego death? Ego
Ego
death.
death, yes. Actually, it's so funny. Today when I was walking my dog, I saw ego death was on the I felt that I was having an ego death today. I woke up and I was like, I think it's happening. And then I walked outside and there was a Tesla with the license plate that said ego death. And I was like, yes, it is happening again.
Speaking of but wait a second. What is an ego death? And I'm going to kind of call bullshit that you know when part of your ego is dying.
No, you do. Oh, I do. I mean, I enjoy it. It's like it's regenerative. But ego death, it's when like a crux of your identity falls away and gives way for a surrender, a new understanding of who you may be. So like ego is just a really fixed, idea of this is who I am and this is who I'm not, and it's not porous. Our egos aren't porous. They're stubborn, right? And ego, I think a lot of the work that I've undergone and that I hope people can come into is getting the curiosity of like, what makes me so, the sort of Socratic, all I know is that I know nothing. Like retreating at space of humility, even in regards to ourselves. Like, I don't know who I am. There isn't, and really, we're not going to go there, but like, there is no I. Like,
okay, that's for
we won't
Twitch
touch
in
that.
like 6 months. That's when like we're really gamified up.
Yeah, no. That's a different level.
Yeah.
But oh
okay,
my
wait, can
gosh,
you
yeah.
give me an example? Can you give me like, because I'm now racking my brain. Like, when did I can think of the moments when I like gave up on an ex, when I finally was like, you know what? I mourned this, I grieved this, I identified that this was abandonment, or that I was too concerned about the third eye gaze. Like, I can see those moments of passing, but I don't. What part of your
So,
ego
okay,
is
here's
still
one of my favorite like teachings, and it's from Ram Dass. Whatever chat may feel about Ram Dass, if you are
I
privy.
have a lot of feels, and the answer, we love him here.
I love him. I
We love
appreciate him. Also, one of the forefathers of the psychedelic movement and a former Harvard professor
Oh,
who,
really?
oh, yeah, his lore is deep. His lore is deep.
Just a quick plug. He has a short documentary. I think it's called Return to the Heart, something along those lines. It's on Netflix. It's very good. It's short.
Oh, I gotta watch. So I gotta
It's
watch
really
that.
good.
I haven't seen it. Okay, so this is originally a Ram Dass teaching, but this is my simplified version that I have shared time and time again, which is that when you live through something unbearable, something in you dies. What is it that dies? It's the part of you that thought you couldn't bear it. That's, I think, a really concise expression of ego death. And it can come from failure, you know? Ego transformation, yeah, that's also cool. But this idea that when you have an idea of, I could never do that, and then it happens, and then you live beyond that happening,
Right.
boom, you are on the other side of an entire egoic identity that was forged around your limitations or forged around your fragility.
So I can't think of any ego deaths that I've had.
Really?
One. Yeah. I mean, give me a few nights of not being able to sleep, and I'll start
I don't believe that.
Yeah, that's a good one, Jay. That's a good one. Okay, so the ones that I'm thinking of are really superficial. It's like my body shape. It's what I look like. It's like the vanity stuff, of which I still haven't told you my favorite story, but we'll wrap with that favorite story. I think like financial scarcity. I don't know. I know
Success
what one
can
is.
also do it. Success is, I have actually found most of my radical ego deaths came when I was successful in things that I thought would fulfill me.
Oh, right.
And then I was like, I'm complete when I get into Harvard. And then you get into
Right.
Harvard and then you're like,
Nothing
oh,
changed.
snap. Ego death, boom. Okay, now I have to and the problem is sometimes we immediately we reconstruct the identity. Okay, so it's a new goal, it's a new aspiration, it's a new notion of success. But learning to live in that space of liminality that says, like, actually, my mom had this quote on the fridge growing up, which was kind of terroristic of her, but it said, nothing you do in this life matters, but it's important that you do it anyway. So imagine being like 7 and growing up seeing that. But that's a radical humility that, like, you know, like my animals, my pets, they don't think like, I'm going to impress I'm going to make this woman a mother. I'm going to bring her maternal. Like, they just are. And yet there's an inspiring force to their being. And I think if people could adopt a similar sort of disposition, they're like harmony can come through in that, like, at least with yourself, but definitely with other people.
When someone asks me what kind of business I'm in, depending on who the person is, although I do think I said this on like CNN recently, when they were like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm just trying to get us all more free, which is like, it's both a cop-out, but it's the truth. Like, everything that I find confusing, I try to navigate it with, like, again, that lighthouse in the distance, like, what's the path to more freedom? Recognizing that, like, our freedoms look a little bit different. But the quote on your mom's fridge, like, everything you do matters and nothing matters at the same time. Again, like, retreating very much into like my Buddhist curiosity. Like, everything's always disappointing, and everything's always disappointing because it's impermanent, because it's always changing. That it helps me get free of the Pulitzer, the TED Talks, the follower count, the whatever the thing is that becomes like some random metric. Like, oh, I don't actually have to do that because it doesn't actually matter. And like, then in those moments, I like sit in that like conundrum of like, yeah, just go build the tiny oases in your house. Because those are, and it has actually only been in the past year that I've really understood the meaning behind joy as an act of resistance, like building the oases even as the stock market plummets. Like
Mm-hmm.
really making the tea and drinking it while it's hot is an act of resistance. Because I've never been, it's always been like the sacrifice to check the box to get into Harvard. I didn't get into Harvard. I would not qualify to get into Harvard. But like it feels like that process of being like it all matters and it all doesn't matter gets us closer to being free.
Mm-hmm. And I think we just, because again, like, sorry to go back to hegemony, sorry to go back to
No, let's go
domination,
back to
but
hegemony. And what was the other word that you said? Hegemony and
subalternity, which is the
yeah,
subaltern is like a post-colonial, that is literally a different, but I think people don't, like, people like free will. Like, we like having our free will and we don't want that to be infringed upon, Americans especially. But I think that what comes in that surrender is also, and with that egoic identity, is like, suddenly I'm not seeking to manipulate people. I don't need to manipulate people's idea of me to suit anything. I don't need to manipulate myself to try and engender a chain of react. Like, I don't think that we realize just how much control we are exerting in vain, because it's like you can just, so much of our internal resources are oftentimes trying to produce a situation or avoid a situation, any number of situations actually. And to let all of that go, that surrender of like, some of the worst things that have happened to me have been the most character developing. Like, some of the things that I wouldn't have written into my life, but now that they've happened, they're worth writing about, and they've given my life a fruitfulness. Like, I don't want to devise a life in which, actually, beyond not choosing to have that response to life, it's actually anti-life, because life is just change. Life is just things revealing itself to you. Like, it's only when we narrativize our life and impose these really rigid personas on things that there becomes this like static, and then we have to continue to exert more and more control over people around us and things to feel safe. And I would think that freedom, in part, to me, is the ability to adapt and still retain your sense of safety. Like, I think that, like, if I am free so long as I am not bound to a certain set of conditions to be. Like, that to me is freedom. And I think that's the reason that a monastic path where people can just like sit in temples and surrender is like so freeing, because I know what it feels like. When I moved to London, I was partially exhausted by having such a large apartment. Like, I wanted a big apartment. I'd grown up homeless. It was the only thing I wanted. But then actually maintaining this house and finding a way to furnish it and spending all the money, it was exhausting.
Mm.
And it became its own,
Job.
kind of imprisoned. It kind of felt like I'm not allowed to live anywhere else. You know what I mean? Because I live in Manhattan and I have a sizable apartment and I'm comfortable. And to forfeit this would be, I feel a sense of fear to lose what I've attained, right? Which is also a common anxiety. Is like, my materials are actually just, my desires are burdens waiting to happen. So now, like, I try to
Oh
keep
my
it. I try to
God,
keep it.
Soul. Are you quoting somebody or is that just like a soul drop?
Freestyle that one.
My desires are burdens waiting to happen. My desires are burdens. Wait, do you see what I mean by like soul? My desires are burdens waiting to happen. What desire do I have that is actually going to be a burden?
Golden handcuffs look like jewelry to everyone else. I was on the treadmill years ago. Again, similar. This was like leading to this bend of me being like, I think I need to I think I need to let my life go and find it again. I think it was Brené's Brown. We can do hard things, right?
Yeah.
That's the right. It was
No, that was
her.
Glennon Doyle.
It was Glennon Doyle's We Can Do Hard Things. I was on the treadmill listening to her. And I think that was maybe the first and only time I've been on a treadmill. And she
I
said,
didn't know
like, when
those
she
things still
started
existed.
I'm not a runner. Not in that context. I'm not a runner. So
Crocs
she
treadmill.
literally, she says, when her success started to take off, she brought in an advisor to sort of organize it all for her. And the advisor said, what do you want to be accountable to? That's how you choose the opportunities.
Soul, I just heard this.
Heard that? Where'd you hear that? Is it Glennon Doyle?
It was.
That's where I heard it.
Okay,
That's so real.
I don't listen to Glennon for a number of reasons. I listened to Glennon on something like 6 weeks ago, and it was like, what? And maybe it was Brene, or Brene was talking about Glennon, something like that. And
Okay.
I was like, I don't want to be accountable to that board seat that I have. I don't want to be accountable to that money. Like, I don't want to be accountable to, and I was like, holy shit, move out of the way.
Yep. Yeah. Things start weighing totally different.
But then I didn't think about like what I do want to be accountable to. Like, I know I want to be accountable to. I talked about this in the book. I don't expect you to remember. But like my fear of future generations being like, where were you when? Like, what were you doing? And I'm trying to raise my kids enough. And they're already like calling me on my bullshit. Like, they're already like, yeah, you say this, but then you do this. And I'm like, fuck. Like, I thought I could like pull that off on you for at least another decade, and you're only 9 now. But I do want to be accountable to smarter people in the future, being like, what is it that you did? And I do sometimes feel like those receipts matter.
Yeah,
and I don't know if I can be like, I created a bunch of little oases while the global order was being gutted, of which I think we need a whole new world order, but I don't want it to be at the hands of like an idiot making decisions about tariffs. Like, you know, I don't know. I think that is my only account. I certainly don't know how to be accountable to myself and not be hard on myself.
I just finished watching Ozark. Have you seen Ozark?
I haven't, but I wanted to know if you watched White Lotus. We are not going to do any spoilers.
I watched White Lotus. I did not like this season. I thought it was really badly written.
Is that because you have a relationship with Buddhism and like
no.
and you're like, this is how it should have gone?
It's because it starts with scenes. It starts with the scene of like the sun going through the water, right? Trying to find it. Where's that scene by the end? Why do they get on the boat after everybody's been like shot and ignores it? Like also like there was a lot about it that I felt like, okay, it feels soap opera-esque, and I just like the idea of watching something that everybody's watching at the same time, because it happens so infrequently now with television, you know? So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be super critical about it, but like, yeah, they definitely just, they threw away.
Lazy? There were definitely a couple of moments. Yeah, but that like moment in the end, and I'm going to try to talk with our lovely, sweet Buddhist security guard. Like, I felt that decision.
To shoot him? Were you trying to say you're going to shoot him? Oh my God. What did you feel in that? What did you see in that scene?
Well, one think Mike should have built in like 10 more seconds of like personal wrestle, because he had that relationship to nonviolence and Buddhism, and I think like mostly throughout the show, like he was like an actual Thai Buddhist who was like visiting the shrines multiple times throughout an episode type thing. And Buddhism being so foundational to calling into like how we are supposed to like not harm, not do.
Yeah.
But like him being so authentic to that, and then having like the girl of the dreams and the job of the dreams, and like that to me feels like it. Like I when I think about my favorite moment, my favorite character, it would be that moment of decision, because that's a little bit where I feel right now, where like I am like, fuck it, I'm not recycling anymore, because it doesn't fucking matter. When I tell you the World War IIIs that have gone down in this house, in my relationships with my personal and extended family, over people not recycling over the past 20 years, or 25, 30 years. And now I'm like, fuck it. Like that's like that's the like anarchist total annihilation. That's where I am right now, particularly when I see what happened in the market today, or this man has control over so many people, not just like the Republican Party and a two-party system that doesn't work anyway, and blah, 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 like Laos, like the fabric weavers in Laos.
I have such so my little rebellion, it's maybe not anarchist, but I still always pick up my dog's poop. And it's like it's my accountability check-in
right.
when no one's looking. That's my daily ritual of putting a point up on the scoreboard for
myself,
collectivity, for just like the social contract. That's me. That's the way I every day just re-sign the social contract, even if my name is, because my neighborhood, it's gonna be so bad. And that's my thing. So I'm having an opposite reaction, but I think also it's because I've untethered from like the idea that maybe my reach can be any greater than that. In terms of the markets today,
okay,
I think the only right, like we're not going there.
That a transition. That's a transition. We call that a graceful transition in Sol's world. No, please. That's all that people here want to talk about.
Which, okay, I'm going to rewind before the transition, because I will say the thing about the dog poop that's interesting in terms of its like just how unimpactful is arguably like I'm producing trash with something that would have biodegraded into the ground, right? So when we take the logic even a step further, I can only find meaning in doing it as in stating myself into a social contract, because actually going any deeper than that, I refute myself,
like,
right?
Now what? Right.
Now I've done a harm. But anyway, in terms of the markets today, I was talking to my partner about it. I'm still getting used to saying husband. It scares me a lot.
It's like a very big deal. I think it's a very big deal. When Sol and I were catching up like 3 weeks ago, she's like, yeah, we just did like the Vegas wedding, which I'm so envious of. I'm so envious on like so many levels of. And I don't know her husband outside of like when I went back on Instagram. He's very smart and so fucking lucky to have you and to like be able to show up for somebody like you. There must be humility and willingness from him that I just don't see a lot of men having or being willing to.
No, he's a special person. I think what occurred to me in terms of like the merging of lives, I love how there's a natural transition away from tariffs because it's just safer ground.
Let's talk about me being unpublicly married. Yes.
I am. This is, and actually, it actually is a big deal because I have not announced that I'm married anywhere. Like
Master Liberty, don't tell anybody.
I'm like, this is, and now it's online, and the internet
now knows. The Twitch knows.
Until now. You guys, it's not a secret. I'm trying to understand. I'm just getting a feel for it all. But when I met someone really peaceful, and I was like, gosh, I wonder what their house looks like. I wonder what their mornings and their nights are like. And my husband is such a peaceful person that when I realized that when people meet him, when he goes into the world on the other side, if they I wonder what this guy's home life is like. It's me. And that felt so empowering because my idea of home is still like my incredibly turbulent, hostile childhood home. But in realizing that like the association of home that other people have of my partner, of my husband, is the home that we've made together was like, wow, I felt so proud. So you're saying that about him, but I feel that more than anything. I'm like, I feel so blessed that a peaceful person saw me as a safe person to build with.
As a safe home. A
safe
harbor. Wow, that's really powerful. I have never thought about that.
I'm always like, look, when I meet people and I'm like, I like imagine. I have there's a word for that. Sonder, where you like realize that you're just one small thing and everyone's life is just as expansive. Like when I get that feeling, it just to sometimes like hearing how you describe me, I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. But him in particular, I married him because he's the only thing that I know I will be forever curious about. And it's what my curiosity of him is his goodness. It transcends logic. It transcends even
Wow.
like it's just there's something so pure and otherworldly to it that it's almost like an anthropological project of mine of just watching, getting as close as like breeding another clone of he's that good. He's a good person, independent of me.
Right. Right. Okay. I like have 100 questions about this because now I want to know, like, for someone who's for someone who considers or use the term controlling to sometimes describe yourself, like, I found and felt that same way about my husband. Like, he is just a good person. Like, he will show up. He says yes when people ask for help. And sometimes I haven't recently, but in other relationships and sometimes with him, like, I am curious how far I can push it.
What do you mean?
I don't know. Just like like he's the rock that I throw myself against a little bit. Like he's so understanding in ways that, like, I don't have patience for other people's ununderstanding about something. I think that's where, like, that ethicality, that curiosity is. Like, his willingness to meet everybody where they are feels very foreign. I don't, and sometimes in my craziness, I'm like, are you still going to show up here for me? Are you still going to meet me here? And he does.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a blessing.
SOL. So I have two questions to wrap up this conversation. One, and I don't like this term, but, like, I'm going to use the term recognizing, and it's not the right word, but if you had a superpower to help you navigate the world's complexities right now, like, what would it be? Because you are coming across as, like, pretty sorted, and you're like 21 years old. So, like, what are you going to work on for the next 100 years of your life? Like, what's the superpower? Like, mine, I don't know how I would answer it either.
My superpower. Definitely surrender.
Okay, so it's the same shit. Okay.
I'm saying that because the word that actually came to mind, it's a delicate
That's the word you have
word.
to say. What's the word?
Well,
she's like, I'll tell you I'm married, but I'm not telling you the word.
I would almost say, like, blindness.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's what actually first came to me. Like, I actually think that when I was walking my dog today, I didn't sleep. I was working all through the night. And so my eyes were strained. I was tired, and I took him out, and I couldn't see very well at all for like a longer period of time in walking than like is normal. But I could feel the sun on my face, and it felt so beautiful. And I took a longer walk than I normally do. And I feel like we're in a period right now where if we rely on, like, our perceptive abilities, they will deceive us, and we can be overstimulated very easily. And I feel like there's I was in an artist residency with a man who was wheelchair bound. He'd gotten polio when he was 13 in West Africa. He still traveled the world as a drummer and a dancer, and his group is called All Ability. And we lived together during this artist residency. And I asked him, like, why is the group called All Ability? And he said, because I can do everything you can do and then things you can't. I have all the abilities, right? And so I think surrender is the next closest word to me, because there's something in like what could be seen as an impairment or debilitating that puts us in a state to actually go beyond like what's just right there. And I feel like right now, getting those intuitive faculties to come in, charging our sensitivity into the correct regions of ourselves. Maybe it's less about staring into the sun and understanding the purpose of the human race through artificial intelligence. And maybe it's just about the warmth. Like maybe like being able to kind of, and this is maybe a bit of like the growth philosophy too, is somewhere in there, just this ability to like walk it back and really locate the parts of this that allow the animals we are to feel at ease with what's happening, because what's going to happen is going to happen anyway. So that's my surrender, quasi, I guess, an acceptance of blindness.
The word choice blindness really impacted me, recognizing that the way that you might be using it is not in is layered, and I understand the jump to surrender, but when I think about this idea, it almost feels and I appreciate your term sensory. I was at the top of a mountain years ago with a young woman who was blind and deaf. Mm-hmm. And through her portal braille machine, I typed in, how does this feel to be at the top of a mountain? You can't see and you can't hear the wind blowing. And she said, it's the same as it feels for you. And I remember being like, it don't feel anything for me. I'm looking at that plot of land and I'm like, that'd be amazing for a house. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so many, like it was so much more like transactional in a way, that the way that I was processing the horizon. And for her, it was so much more like present and like forcing ourselves into the now. And I think my answer is the same. It's a little bit more diluted, though. It's a little bit more like, get out of your own way. Don't do the compare and contrast. Like, calm down on the cryotherapy thing, which I didn't do because I didn't do, but I will do if I ever want to, just so we're clear. But it's like, it's why I love this platform. And I love engaging with people like you, where like we just stumble through like Crocs. Crocs to like ego death, whatever the hell that is, to like, we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to Buddhism. She does. I don't. But just like, I am so in love with the freedom that comes with being curious and really wanting to be more forgiving of myself in the complexities of the sacred dance, that I'm an amazing mom until I have to tell my kids to brush their teeth for the 4th time that night. I can like praise my partner's goodness and generosity until I sometimes think he's being taken advantage of. Then I can get witchy. Like just the like being kinder to myself, because I've been raised in a society that told me I wasn't skinny enough, my eyelashes weren't long enough, I didn't have enough money, I didn't get into the schools, like that I should be ashamed of that. And I want to park the shame that I was given in the right parking spots, even, and just like recognize when the car pulls out a little bit and like help it repark itself. But I love the surrender and I love the warmth. I love studying at the pollen aperture, like the reproductive organs of flowers that are blooming on my front lawn. They are so beautiful. The structure of plants are so beautiful, and they're so temporary. Days.
Yeah. That's what's gonna get us through. And it's and not mistaking observation for information. Like you can see a lot of what's going on and it can actually inform you of nothing. I mean, I can't imagine anything more, more proof of that than what the fiasco with tariffs just over the last few days, and just how
And
quickly
transition to
that
tariffs.
intel and just how quickly that intel, you know what I mean, became bad, or was, you know, or was obscured, the truth being obscured, you know, strategy. And I think this is like gonna be a waiting game, and like the best way to spend our waiting time is by like coming back into our own lives and our own bodies, and like what's being careful about where we place our focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Soul, thank you so much
Thank you.
for saying yes to this. Thank you so much for being you in the world. I was going to say like picking up the dog shit, but like if there's anybody who I know is like just really doing the thing in a gracious way with the world around them and with themselves. We didn't even get into like the power of movement. I didn't even finish the story, my favorite story about like dignity and makeup and all those kinds of things and what that means. But
Ooh,
I don't know.
dang. You
Maybe we'll
used
have
the
to have a
word of the
part
week
two.
for me. Dignity.
Is dignity your word of the week?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to hear the story real quick? I'll end on a smile.
Yes.
Okay. Rob Bell. Do you know who Rob Bell is?
I don't.
Okay. Google. Oh, you just read it. It's called a sex god, God sex, whatever it is. He is a pastor who talks about like, he's a pastor that talks about the things that like Christians don't want to talk about, and so it's Sex God is the name of his book. It's phenomenal book.
Okay.
And he tells the story of which I tried to fact check because I wanted to include it in the book, and I didn't because I couldn't find that it actually happened anywhere. But I don't care because I'm pretty sure it's legit. World War II ends. Allied troops show up at a concentration camp, walk in, see nothing but horror, say, radio back to somebody, airdrop every medical supply you can get your hands on. Fast forward 24 hours, planes fly above and drop boxes. Parachute opens, it comes like whittling down to the concentration camps, and the Allied forces run over, start ripping it open, hoping there's like meals and medicine. And there's not. Inside the box is makeup. The shipments got crossed, and all they have is boxes of bright red lipstick. So they call back and they're like, please resend the shipment, whatever it may be. But the victims of World War II, these people who, most of them, many of them Jews, but lots of other demographics being prosecuted, rip open the boxes and start pulling out red lipstick and start putting it on. And they go over to some of the folks who are very literally on their deathbed because they're starving to death, and they put red lipstick on their cheeks and like rouge up their cheeks. And one soldier had, I guess, written this account and said, actually, the best thing that could have fallen out of the sky that day was red lipstick because of what it gave these people. They felt in their body they were adding life to their family members and their loved ones in their last breath with a little bit of color on their cheeks. And that story has felt like the genesis of what dignity means. And I'm not interested in like trading it in all the ways that we could like go after like the ideals of what it is meant to look like. But I love how I feel when I feel beautiful and when I feel sexy and when I feel sexy to myself when I'm wearing red lipstick. And I think that's universal.
That is so beautiful.
Are you
That is so
crying?
beautiful that it made me
Are
cry.
you crying?
I cry. That is really beautiful.
And when I think of like your mom and how she was like, you can come into your body and you can present this way to the world, you can also present that way to yourself. Like when I do Zooms or when I go on air virtually, sometimes I still put on perfume.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's so much there. That's quite beautiful.
I know. Okay, Treasure, will you consider coming back on? And I want to thank everybody in
Absolutely.
the chat for engaging. I particularly want to call out some of the folks who like to debate the nuances of politics and party and all of those things and still showing up here. And I hope, if anything, this conversation offered some confusion, and confusion that doesn't make you want to turn away, but makes you want to lean in harder, to be more curious, to be more compassionate with yourself, to be more compassionate with the confusion. But that is what this space is all about. And thank everybody for being here. Sol, particularly you.
Oh, thank you, Jenna. Thank you, chat. You guys are awesome. I enjoyed this.
Radical
All right.
We should do a conversation of everyone talking about their radical ego deaths. Getting into Harvard is a really good one.
So I want to do something kind of like spoofing TED Talks called Fred Talks, where you talk about things you failed at that brought you no greater meaning. You didn't learn anything. It was just a failure, an uncomfortable situation.
The Fred Talks. Oh my God, that's so fucking good. Well, if you want the SOL hour on Land of Twitch to host the Fred Talks or anything like that, the answer is a resounding yes. The Fred Talks.
Oh,
it's so fucking funny.
This was so fun. Yeah, I don't feel afraid of Twitch anymore. That's a revelation. Let me just.
Yeah, everyone was on their best behavior. Fred Talk Fridays. It's so funny. It's so funny. Okay, my love, I'm going to hang up because I have kids who need to go to sleep, and we will be in touch, okay?
All right. Good night, y'all.
See ya.